Hi, my name is Gibson, and I'm the co-owner and creator of the Personal Development School. This is your daily breakthrough video, and in this video, we are going to talk about some of the main causes of CPTSD, and we're going to talk about something called the ACES test, and really the relationship between CPTSD and our actual physical health. So before I dive into all of this information, and in the following part of the series, by the way, we're going to talk about some tools to help assist you in your journey for reprogramming CPTSD. Again, I'm going to very strongly advise that if you are working through this, that you do seek out help with a local professional, somebody you can see in person, these sorts of things. But I will give you some really, really fantastic tools to help you understand how to reprogram a lot of the stuff that goes on and what you can do about it at a subconscious level. So, before I dive into all of this, we are still running our With You sale, basically as long as all the craziness is going on in the world. So I hope everybody's doing okay and staying safe. The coupon code is With You for 25% off. And you can jump in to join our 90-day challenge to become secure, which will be on beginning November 15th, with a lot of really well outlined goals to hit, targets to hit, things to do to really get you to secure. And a lot of our research shows when people come in, they show up, they do that work, they're consistent, they become very, very secure or very well on their way to secure, like 65%, 70% more than they started off as within that 90-day period. So stay tuned for that. And then we also have our extra social features being added, with attachment coaches coming in, running some events, masterminds, morning and evening routines. And then I do the 4 live calls a week as well, of course. So I'll put a link to the coupon code in the description box below. So this was part of an earlier series where we talked about CPTSD in and of itself. And we covered like some of the major components of CPTSD and how to sort of recognize some of the different symptoms and the way that they might show up. So let's talk about the actual causes in here. And then we're going to really dive into sort of the impact of on our physical health in this part of the video, in this part of the series as well. So some major causes can include neglect, abandonment. Bigger ones tend to be like shattered trust in the home for any number of reasons. Parental alienation can be a huge reason individuals experience CPTSD, which if you're not familiar, I do believe I have a video on that, but I can make a follow-up more in-depth video. I think I just mentioned it honestly at one point in a fearful avoidant video. But basically parental alienation is this idea that one parent will pin a child sort of against the other parent, as a means to sort of garner some kind of control or bond to the child. And sometimes, though not necessarily consciously premeditated for that parent who might be doing that, sometimes also as a method of trying to punish the other parent. Like, oh, the child or the children are on my side. Or to feel like there's an outlet, like I'm going to connect to the child and I'm going to, share a lot with this individual. And sometimes it can also be for legal reasons, long-term, if there's a divorce going on, there can be multiple sort of facets to it and it's worth doing its own entire video on. But what that often tends to very much do is really fracture the child's ability to trust one or both caregivers, because usually when there's a pinning of one parent against the other in the child's mind, often that parent is demonized. And so the child learns, oh, mom or dad or both are unsafe. They have these scary things happening. I can't trust them because they're often being fed information from another caregiver. So this is a very common reason why this can take place. Obviously, things like violence in the home, whether that's violence enacted on you or towards you, or violence that you see between caregivers, and then being raised in obviously a physically unsafe or emotionally unsafe environment. And this can include having a parent who's struggling with addiction, who you feel like isn't sober and you can't trust. And so again, you see some of the overlaps here between fearful avoidant and CPTSD. But again, what I will say, we can cover in a separate video, not everybody who's FA has CPTSD by any means, okay? There can just be some certain overlapping constituents or root causes. And as I mentioned in the previous video, other attachment styles can also have CPTSD. It's not exclusively an FA thing. Now, a way that is often used to measure a person's childhood trauma is there's an amazing, and there's a huge body of research on this, and it's something called the ACES. And ACES stand for Adverse Childhood Event Survey. And it's basically a set of 10 questions. And I will put a link in the description box below. And this is designed to basically understand the relationship to trauma and how it actually impacts to childhood trauma specifically, and how that childhood trauma actually has very clear consequences to a person's physical health and their adult life. And so the reason I want to talk about this in the context of CPTSD is because obviously CPTSD is related to childhood trauma, or it can be trauma in the home, like I mentioned, in maybe you're in an adult relationship for 15 years and that person is an abusive partner, and maybe you're in a trauma bond or something like that. That can also have an impact and create CPTSD as well. But for the sake of this part of the topic, I want to touch on the ACEs test for a moment. So I'll put a link in the description box below. I highly recommend, if you are wondering if you might have CPTSD, to take the survey, because there's a very strong correlation between CPTSD and having a higher score. And so what the ACEs score has proven, and there's also a phenomenal TED talk about this that I will also put in the description box below. There's a massive relationship between having a higher ACEs score and your physical health. And research has actually demonstrated that there is an increased risk at having diabetes, fibromyalgia, of course, things like depression, anxiety, addiction, because of a lack of feeling safe in childhood. And so that lack of feeling safe in childhood, or feeling like there's not safety in the home, not only has a greater chance of creating CPTSD, but also physical health problems in a person's adult life. And I think a really big reason why this happens is that person stays in sympathetic nervous system, right? They're more in their fight, flight, freeze, fawn all the time. And as a byproduct of that, we have imbalanced cortisol levels. There's research that says increase in cortisol tends to disrupt our immune system regulation and our immune system's ability to be strong and working effectively. And when we're not down regulating properly, we're going to have issues with sleep. We're going to have issues with stress in general and just not feeling mentally, emotionally okay. And we're not in that rest and digest mode, in parasympathetic nervous system mode. And that rest and digest mode is really where our cells repair, and where our body repairs and heals and is able to function at a greater state of homeostasis. And so when we have this pervasive lack of feeling safe because of traumatic experiences that have imprinted the subconscious mind, that will have an impact on our physical health long term. And research has clearly concluded this. And I want to do a video at some point on how to properly downregulate, because what's interesting as well is some individuals can be high functioning with CPTSD, and something we don't realize, and this is actually not in words from myself, but from a naturopathic doctor friend of mine that I was speaking with, and in the words of this individual, and we were having a conversation about trauma and people and all these different things, and she was saying, well, what's so interesting is the body doesn't recognize good stress versus bad stress. It only recognizes stress. And in other words, maybe you just have kids for the first time, or maybe you launch a new business, or maybe you are getting something off the ground. It might be an amazing time and a beautiful time, but if you're out of balance and you're always upregulated, you're always on, you're always in like go, go, go mode, you're the workaholic, you're this, you're that, you're actually not properly down regulating. And so even though it might be good stress, it's still stress, and it's still going to have the same impact on your nervous system and your physiology in general. And so obviously when there's CPTSD that somebody's struggling with or going through, you're more likely to stay in sympathetic nervous system mode, in fight or flight or freeze or fawn. And when you're in that space, then you are more likely to be out of balance physiologically, and there can be a major impact because of that. Now, it's important to note as well, some people with more ACEs don't have CPTSD, right? Or PTSD for that matter, they can go through traumatic events, and for any number of reasons, including that they actually work through them, not have either of those adult manifestations. And it's also important to note that if you do take a look at the ACES test or survey, um, you the degree, in my opinion, this isn't research there, but in my opinion, having gone through it and gone had clients of mine go through it many times, um, the degree of a specific ACE can also impact, each specific question can also impact a person's likelihood of developing PTSD or CPTSD. So, for example, if one of them is talking about abuse, if somebody had one small low level abusive incident in childhood where maybe a parent physically hurt them but apologized, or it wasn't like a huge physical thing, versus if there was a very strong event where maybe a child was physically abused and they thought like, am I going to die, like what's happening, and they were really physically hurt, then that's obviously going to have a different impact. So the number of ACEs is what has been studied, but I think it's important to take into consideration the intensity of which an experience occurs. So I hope this is helpful. In the next part of this video series, I'm going to do a deep dive into some really useful tools that you can use to better understand some of the trauma or traumatic events. And this is great for anybody who wants some extra support and understanding how the subconscious mind processes trauma, and some tools that you can use to work through a lot of this. So thank you for watching. Stay tuned for the next part of this series, and I will see you in the next video.